Welcome, everybody, to the weekly ROC Open Mic. We do this call for you. MSPs asked to hear what was new with the platform, what we've been working on, and you folks wanted to do some R&D or rob and duplicate of automation ideas from your peers. A couple of reminders. If you're interacting with us in Discord, please either tag us or respond. We are monitoring hundreds of Discord channels simultaneously. Also, please accept our Discord use as the advancement of human technology. Prior to Discord, we used Slack as a society. Prior to Slack, we sent emails. Prior to emails, we made phone calls. Prior to phone calls, what was it? Morse code, right? So this is just the evolution, and it gets better for you. With Discord, you get a pretty quick response from the team. You're interacting directly if you're in your private channel with a Rewst full-time employee. If you're in the public channels, you're interacting with other MSPs who are building automations. Speaking of asking questions in those channels, let's see, how many MSPs have been successful who have never asked a question? Let me count. 2, 6, 12, 0. 0 MSPs have ever succeeded at automation without asking questions. If I look for an anti-pattern with MSPs when it comes to automations, it's the ones that think they know everything already, and they already think they're automation experts. So by asking questions, that's a really good sign that you're going to succeed with automation. You can ask whatever you want in the public channels, and you can ask whatever you want in your private channel if you don't want the public to know about it. My favorite part of the year is when I get to remind you folks about Flow. Flow is our automation conference, vendor agnostic. Everyone will be there automation wise. Please come to Flow. It's going to be pretty cool. Someone drop a Flow link in the chat. Come on, someone drop. Someone Ashley did it. Thank you. I see you folks. I see you folks are tracking our methods of communication prior to Morse code in chat as well. Thank you very much. With that, I am now, one last thing. This is a highly technical call. If this is your first time joining the open mic, this is for your engineers, your automation folks to come in and get ideas and learn more. If you're a business owner or a decision maker, feel free to kick back and listen and learn with everybody else. All right, Ash, take it away.
Thank you, Aaron. All right. And for our very first open mic of 2025, I'm going to have to get used to saying that. We're going to have a little demo from myself and John Dupre, and Kelvin talking about how we leveraged Rewst into some of our beta process over there. And we're going to have a open floor for questions and any demos that anybody wants to present last minute. If you've been having some nerves and you're ready to like, all right, let's go. Start getting that prepared because we'll probably have some time. And I'm also I have a workflow that I showed a little bit last week of, and I need a little bit of help with. So if nobody chimes in, I will be asking somebody to help me live build. So let's jump before, I guess without any other ado, let's go over to Daniel for the dev and marketplace updates.
Hello, everybody. So I just realized I don't think I talked about the, oh geez, this is great. Is this right? This is the update? Yeah, I hope so. Teams is acting up for me. I don't think we gave the update last week. So we didn't do a release this past Saturday, but we did on December 20th. on December 21st. So this is going to be, this stuff is a week old, but we haven't talked about it in an open mic yet. So what have we been up to? We have a new Cove integration. Cove is part of we're trying to expand our Enable suite of products, and Cove is the latest addition to that, and we have more upcoming. The next one's going to be Insight. We have added adjustable column sizes to the template editor. We've updated the new organizational variables functionality, so when you click and create a new organizational variable, instead of adding to the bottom of the table, it adds to the top of that table. And then we have added the Pax8 OAuth authentication. All Pax8 users must transition over to this authentication by January 31st or before February 1st. Otherwise, your API key authentication will not work. Just to show a couple of those things, we have, just integrations page. We have the new Cove integration available. I see that Mandy has a question probably relating to Pax8, but you'll see here that we have, we still have the old authentication available here, but all you're going to need to do now is click authorize. It will authorize using OAuth, and then that will override your client ID and client secret. Mandy, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if that's a timeline on Pax8 side or on your side, that deadline?
On Pax8 side.
Okay, fun.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah,
thanks.
It should be as simple as a click of the button. We've been testing this very thoroughly because Pax8 is a key integration of ours, and yeah.
Yeah, for you, but for other platforms that integrate with Pax8 that may not know about that deadline, it's not going to be that simple. But yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
So API key authentication will only work from a single IP address. So that's where that's why we had to change at least. So it could still work for other integrations, but because everybody's Pax8 calls come from a single Rewst IP, Pax8 sees like, hey, we have whatever hundreds of Pax8 API key
okay, so they're not
IPs that are Rewst. No,
the
they're
old
not killing
thing. They're just it's causing problems with like rate limiting or whatever issues they're seeing. Is that okay? Got it.
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Good clarification. The template editor. So here you can just see, you can preview and you can just switch the column sizes. Simple, but a good quality of life fix here. And then my favorite one of this week is the org variables page. You can see here that you can create an org variable and it goes to the top of the page. It used to be down at the bottom, so you'd have to scroll and sometimes miss it. As for bug fixes, we've been working on a lot of bug fixes for create replications in our global regions. So if you weren't aware, we have US region, a UK region, EU, 2 US regions actually, and an Asia region. And so we've been working on a bunch of fixes to get crates automatically replicated across all those regions. Fixed a forms bug and page crash in chart dataset workflows. This is related to App Builder, and a couple of other bug fixes relating to integrations. Do we have anything fun coming up? We have a generic GraphQL request action that we're working on and is being tested right now. We have some cool reporting that's being generated with this. We have a couple of crates that, or a couple of workflows that are on the way, and maybe we'll be able to share. Google Enterprise License Manager, I believe this is being released tomorrow, but it might be behind a feature flag at that point. I'll have to double check. We have a GitHub integration, granular forms permissions. I believe that should be ready after tomorrow's release too. And then we have a duo list phones action update that it was failing for non+1 country codes. Yeah, so that's the final update of 2024 for Dev. And now let's look at the marketplace update for January 3rd. Am I frozen? I hope I'm not frozen. Okay.
No, you look good to me. Oh, your
excellent.
video maybe is maybe.
Video, maybe. Well, as long as you can see the updates here. Okay, we have 2 new crates. These are very exciting. I don't have a demo for you this week, but we're going to have a demo for you hopefully on these relatively shortly. We have Google Workspace user onboarding and offboarding. So if you go into the Create Marketplace right now, you type in GWS, Google Workspace admin, Google Workspace, we have these crates available for everybody right now, as of today, hot off the press. We also have app builder apps. They're not available in the Create Marketplace, but they are now available by request to the ROC or your CSM. So we have an operational analytics portal, forms portal, and all-in-one client portal that are available. Hopefully, at the very least, there'll be some inspiration for you. At the very best, you can put them to good use in production immediately. Yeah, we have also made a few bug fixes this week relating to the following crates: detailed MFA reporting, user offboarding, Google Workspace. We've also made some bug fixes before we released, and then the new employee onboarding. And then we have a couple of refactors coming soon as well. But yeah, that's it from the dev and marketplace side of things. So back to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, now we will jump over to Clea. Clea with the education.
Sorry, slow fingers. I got Chief Baby Officer Willow here helping me out with today's updates. We're working on publishing our page behind the scenes, but the link that I just dropped in the chat was what the Roost crew played for a fun holiday game. So if you haven't played Codenames, it's browser-based. There's a fun online version, and you can make your own cards. So you can bet that things like folders and negative time savings and jinja made an appearance in our Codename games. See, what else do we have in terms of updates? Shout outs to Timothy, Kenneth, Matt, Shrega, Julia, and Christopher for passing the foundation certification. Join the ranks and take the exam to get your prestigious badge. Shout outs to Sarah, William, and myself for earning the Clean Automation certification. Collect them all, certificates, not just foundations. The next Foundations Bootcamp takes place next week, so Eddie will be back at it, and I'll drop a link to that in the chat. Make sure you sign up. I think we have nearly 30 for part 1, and part 2 is soon to follow. So those are offered once a month. Again, if you prefer learning live with the fabulous Eddie instead of watching videos of this lady online on your own time, you've got options there. I think that is about it. One other thing I wanted to share is that I'm working on an onboarding course, self-paced behind the scenes. So if anyone here has completed their Roost onboarding, I would love to hear some tips in the chat of, you know, what's the most helpful thing that you did, or what do you wish you knew earlier? Anything to help out other MSPs. I'd love to include some quotes from you all to make that course more exciting. So anything that helped you out with onboarding, feel free to share it, and I'll follow up with a message in our CLUCK Discord later. Just do it. Yeah, that's good advice.
And if anybody has any feedback or wants to have a discussion, we can discuss it right now, or we can also have conversations later as well, just on giving some of that feedback and how that would look, because that's a great way to have your voice heard on the educational materials, right? Is to like let them know what worked for you and what didn't.
Absolutely.
And let us enhance that.
Yeah, this girl's all about the organization variables crate, so take advantage of that if you're not already.
Awesome. So I think I'll get us kicked off. We are going to kind of do a little bit of a tag team here for a few different things that both John and I have been working on, but I'll let Kelvin kind of talk us through the start a little bit.
I love being involved. It's my favorite thing. So we actually have first off, this was inspired by who was it last week or 2 weeks ago who did the tag team presentation. I absolutely love that. So I told my team I want to do that too. It's so cool. There's a couple of things that we've been experiencing lately in regards to stuff we do at Cyberdrain, where we had to connect a lot of different products. We have a myriad of things that we either build ourselves, like our management portal, or that we use for our day-to-day operations, like HubSpot. What else do we use? Azure, M365,
GitHub.
all of these things, GitHub, and all of them had to be connected somehow. So I figured I wanted everything. I've always said I want everything to have a single source of truth. That's the same for automation. Ash decided, let's make sure that we approach this from the right angle and just connect all these products in the way that we should. For example, we wanted to collect information for a for our beta, specific user information, like, hey, what's your SIP domain, what's your Discord username, and this kind of stuff. I, of course, as a programmer, immediately went like, oh, we can build that into a portal. And Ash was like, no, that's customer data. That should live in our CRM. That should be there. That's what the CRM was built for. You shouldn't start making something on your own again. And at that moment, I started seeing like, okay, we have to connect all of these products. And that's where Ash's expertise in Rewst came in. And I just said like, hey, let's make sure we start connecting these things. So Ash, if you could start explaining on all of the magic you've done on the background to connect HubSpot, GitHub, Discord, our management portal, and that's it, I think. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And the great thing about this, as you'll see, is that a lot of it is stuff that I've either already built or that I've already done, where by being able to have it be modular, I'm able to replicate that work a lot easier. And so as Kelvin said, we have within the management portal on the SIP side, a beta program form. And one of my pet peeves with that, like he said, is like anything that's like, oh, like we could do a form, let's plug in one of our own. And it's like, well, like there's problems with that dynamically. We wanted to build that out. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't have it coming into a form, right? Like HubSpot, like you do a little bit of research, HubSpot has an API for their forms. So you can have a front-end form on HubSpot that people are filling out, or in vice versa, that they don't have to fill out the form, but you're sending data to that form. And so that's what I wanted to accomplish here, where I wanted the results of this form to end up in HubSpot, but I didn't want multiple hops or multiple skips to get it there. I just wanted it to come in. And Rewst doesn't need that data. Rewst just needs to be able to do the specific functions that I wanted it to do, such as some Discord enhancements. So I'll go through this a little bit. But basically, what it allowed, what I did was I created a form in HubSpot. And that form just has all of the relevant details on it that we would want to collect. And then we kind of like replicated a form on the management portal, but when the submission came through, those form results came through as if they were submissions to this form, which was the equivalent of using the form natively, just in a programmatic way. And then we have the operations hub of HubSpot as well, which allows us to do a lot of webhook and like custom code functionality, but I don't need to recreate the wheel of what Rewst is exceptional at. I just wanted to get the data over there, but only if there was a Discord username, because if there wasn't a Discord username, then I didn't need to run that automation. So I had a workflow in a HubSpot that was literally just hey, if a new submission comes through this form, and they have a Discord username that was filled out, I want you to call this webhook and I want you to send this information. So then that webhook then goes into Rewst, and it's what triggers my workflow to add the users to the beta in Discord. And what's really great about this is that I don't think I created much other than like the styling of my notifications here, because a lot of it was stuff that I had already stripped out and modularized from processes that I've been building before, like the app platform beta process for Rewst was very similar. It used a HubSpot form, but it used a Rewst form, but then that stuff pulled in. And so this is just using the same Rewst workflow, but the plugins were a little bit different. And I was able to do that because I have been slowly starting to like build out my components. And so all I needed to do here was do the notification and the channel updates, which is actually something that can be its own sub-workflow for anything where I need to send notifications just by plugging in the embed code data as a variable. I can basically make that dynamic for any type of situation. But I didn't have to create this add or remove workflow. I already had that built. And so that I could just say, hey, I want to add this role. And then it goes off and does its relevant work, brings up the information. And something that would have taken me most of a day to like set up really only took me like an hour to pull all the pieces together. And then this is the add or remove role workflow that I originally built for our verification process at Rewst that has been modified a few times and now is more of an enhancement there. But that is kind of the process that I've built. So now the team gets notified in our channel when a new request to join the beta comes through, and then we welcome the user to the channel, and then if it were to fail, it would notify the team as well. So solving for visibility, we have like the downstream details of everything in HubSpot tracked and audited, so we know who and when, and we're automatically updating people without needing to do a lot of manual steps there. That is my side of it. I'm not sure if you want me to pause there, and actually, yeah, I'll pause there. Does anybody have any questions or like want to chat about anything that I've discussed there so far, or want me to dig into anything that I've shown more? You can chime in or interrupt me, or also write in chat too, because otherwise we'll.
How has doing this process improved your processes with things at Rewst, if at all?
You mean like the Ouroboros of like the updates, like updating?
The idea is that everything that like you learned while you were doing this group project, and how did you bring it back home to your team?
I'm bringing it. This is the first time that I'm talking about it. I only just built it, but like I think that the discussing it, showing it off here, and then I don't know. Like, how do you think I should?
I mean, totally personal opinion, but like, doing ProServe stuff for SIP has taught me things about SIP that I brought back to my team, and we use SIP better. So, yeah. I was kind of same boat.
So the thing I'm noticing the most as I'm doing some of these things is like, there's like, I don't know whether it was like somebody, like I think it was Aaron maybe, that came up with the concept of like the high hanging fruit, but like things that you wouldn't have assumed that you'd been able to do. And then all of a sudden, if you can like, it's actually super like logical and processable. And so as soon as you modularize the right pieces, you're like, oh, I can componentize that and pull that in. And so it makes me think, like I just like, even this one here, like I just throw a note around something and I'm like, this should be a sub workflow, and I'm intrinsically motivated to make it one because I know that it's going to make my future life easier to be able to just pull it in and use it later.
Yeah, one of the coolest things. Sorry, Aaron.
So just for folks on so we always talk about low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit are things that we do every day already manually that we think we can go out and automate pretty easily. But high-hanging fruit is the stuff that you don't typically think about automating, because it's almost impossible to do manually, right? So like, think of the noisiest product that opens tickets in your PSA today that just has become noise. That's high-hanging fruit.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I loved most about this entire project is that I was worried about the complexity of it all, and especially because we had to connect so many systems. And Ash was just like, well, I've actually already built all of this. Not a single part of these workflows is net new. Everything was already created in some form or the other and just copied and pasted and sort of re-envisioned to fit in this workflow. It's everything was already there, which was absolutely amazing for me.
And sometimes even it's just like the mental process being already there is like I don't know about other people, but I find like the figuring out which direction to take off in is sometimes the part that like I feel stalled by the most. And so like having like there's just a small little thing that's like, oh, like you're getting this boost. It goes right away. Okay, yeah. So let's jump over now to John.
Hello. So the next step in our beta process is actually to open it up a little bit more by showing people how to switch to the beta if they'd like to. This does pose some challenges. You have to make changes to GitHub. And I was aiming to make this a little bit easier for people by making a little workflow to help with that. Although I did run into some blockers, which I'll get into momentarily. Let me just share my screen. Or window. You guys would not be able to see my whole screen unless you're Kelvin or Ash or somebody else with a widescreen. But here is my pretty little workflow, which I whipped up just before this call. It does a couple things. It grabs, it takes input first, just your GitHub username, and then it starts doing some basic API checks through GitHub to find your repository, find your workflow, get the workflow file, and then ideally just do a couple simple replaces to make it work for what you need to do to make it push the beta. And then it fails miserably because GitHub workflows contain Jinja-like variables, and Jinja does not like that, as seen here. If I show you guys the error, it's very long and complicated, but then it says undefined error, secrets is undefined, because it's $, open bracket, get secrets, dot secret name, and it looks just like Jinja, so Jinja tries to parse it, and Jinja says no. So it is sad.
Is that the fact that it's happening down there? Is it something that like you could do like so maybe somebody from like has more technical answer?
I'm wondering if there's a way to like escape the Jinja variables in the
raw.
text.
Have you tried the raw
beforehand?
and in-raw tags?
I did not.
I think there's
So,
like
so this one's just a really simple like web request. But how would I get it?
Doesn't work when it comes through with that error. That's the problem.
Yeah, so I'm just checking to see here. But if I was to pull in like the actual results here, there's a filter that I could apply to escape it, or would it still try to parse it?
So in my set execution as Rewst thing that I made ages ago, I was doing string replacements to just change anything that had brackets to like ARG or some random string, and then pulling it back as an output right at the end, how I wanted it to be. And that's how I got around it all. It was some really bad.
You just did string replacements. I mean, that does work.
Classic lab tech escaping, you know?
I was just going to say, John, you can do some regex. You're excellent at that.
I could do a regex replace to make it, but I literally just whipped this thing up right before this call, by copying and pasting my repository diagnostic stuff that I showed off many moons ago.
You too are a fan of the benefiting from reusable components.
Absolutely, copy and paste. Then you don't have to worry about each of these right here are sub workflows that just call GitHub using the custom integration without having to go and set my overrides and everything automatically. I have sub workflowed that, even if it's just a simple like 2 thing. But yeah, then I don't have to go and do this every time I want to do a GitHub action.
We need to transform to just do all string replacements for anything that Jinja would pass.
Or it's just like a Jinja escape, so that it just treats it as like a raw string variable instead.
Use something like that pre-process that, because I think the one issue that I ran into is if it comes back in the body of the workflow to begin with, or in the execution or whatever, then you can't do anything. It just fails right away.
Yeah.
But if it's happening later, then you can probably wrap it or do some replacements, right?
So it does die like before I even get.
Oh, there, so that's where it's. Oh, wait, no.
No, it gets the file. The file is here. You can see it. But then if you look in here, I have my $, double bracket, secrets, Azure Static Web Apps API token. So then it tries to parse this, and it's like, I don't know what secrets are.
So Jordan said, okay, so Alden did a pipe E. I thought that you were just saying like, je. I thought that was a J. I was like, are you saying yes? Okay, so Jordan said like you should be able to do a pipe E or like raw for anything that's in the body or in the context. So we can try that out. That's cool.
You said pipe E?
Like right there?
Like so? Sorry, I don't know where my chat went. There it is.
Yes, I believe so. Cool. Try that out. We don't, by the way.
Here, I'll do it live. Why not?
Yeah. And
we'll run it again and see what happens. Nope. Nope, same thing. Still thinks it's Jinja.
So where's that particular string being generated?
It comes from the workflow file itself. So if, for instance, go to.
Yeah, the raw should work. Like I just did this real quick as a test. Send a screenshot in chat. But if I take out the raw directive, it displays hello world. If I keep the raw in there, it comes out with correct raw result of the body. Sorry for the light mode. But like that's basically what you're doing, right? On your
sort of, except I'm trying to do string replacement on it too, which then it needs to evaluate it.
You're doing string replacement on other strings around the CTX header, so to speak, right? Like around the inside.
Like I need to change the output location, for instance.
Well, I mean, just put it in as a Jinja variable. That was a joke, but that'd been funny. Let's see.
Just make the Jinja variable the raw string. Oh.
Make a version of this for Rewst specifically.
Okay, so
yeah, this is a tricky one that I haven't been able to get around as of yet. I mean, I could maybe
Looks
pipe
like-
it to like a PowerShell script or something.
Does
Well, when
GitHub give us a way to download it in base64? I wonder.
it does,
Wait.
you can get files that way.
Yeah, I could probably get the raw file in base64. I don't know how that would help us though, because I still need to
Well-
do. I need to do a
Just do the
transformation on it.
replacement.
Yeah, but you can wrap that content when you expand it. You can wrap that in a raw potentially. I mean, we're trying and do your text processing on it within that, like
Yeah.
within an action, and get the result back in base64 before it gets past any other actions. Might be worth trying.
It'd cost you clock cycles, but couldn't you treat it as a character array and then do your replacement based on?
Yeah, true.
That's one way.
I
to do
mean,
it.
you know, you gotta brute force your way around this, right? Like,
I definitely want to see whenever somebody solves this problem, I want to see their creative solution.
It's gonna look like code golf probably, especially if you're doing like character by character.
no, you should be able to use sets and just do like unions or so. I mean, it's not that costly, but you just have to treat them as something other than the Unicode characters, because that's what's killing you. If you can encode it a different way, then you can still achieve the goal.
I mean, I'm sure that we could replace the double curly with the like double square instead, and then it wouldn't evaluate it, and then just replace it at the end.
Yeah, well, that's like it was already suggested. Just do a string replacement that breaks
Yeah.
the jinja and then replace it back. But
Yeah, that's a very lab tech way to do things.
If it works,
If it works.
probably don't do it, honestly.
I mean, for you guys, it might just be worth doing it, like build an Azure function to translate it.
Yeah, that, I mean, if I had more time, I could have like had to just call something on the management app and then have it do it there.
Any other questions or comments or ideas? Otherwise, Daniel will present us something on his side. I actually he was like, I don't have anything fancy. I'm like, I refuse fancy. Show me the coolest, simple stuff you've got. Everybody needs to, I think that should be a theme for 2025. What simple things have made my life better? Daniel with a USA.
Yeah, there you go. That one.
Do you guys mind if I just say something quickly with what you just said?
Yeah.
Just to know that we're completely new to Roost. I'm still haven't had my onboardings on Monday, but we've had our instance for a week, and I'm trying to get around it, learn it. First, I'd like to thank the people that have helped me in Discord so far, being patient with me, knowing almost nothing about this. But just what you said about the simple stuff, that I would really appreciate, because that's the one thing I have found lacking. Is I'm usually quite good at reverse engineering things to learn, but most of the stuff that's here right now is so frigging big and complicated. Trying to reverse engineer it right now is challenging, and I'm not finding enough simple things to look at and learn from first.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
more simple things would be very useful. Even tutorials, anything like that would be great.
Rod, are you you heard it here, guys. Rod, if you're not going to do it for me, do it for Rod. Let's get some simple workflow showcases going. We actually have done quite a few. If you ping me on Discord, I can send you some good open mic recordings. And there's a lot of tidbits and stuff that I'm sure the community can share out as well. But that's one of the things that I'm always talking about on this call. Is like everybody it's like ready to show off like the big cool things, and it's like imposter syndrome is real for all of us. And I mean, I'm nervous as heck. I forget half of the times when I'm showing things off when I could probably dig in better. But I love seeing when people can show us how they've learned, and it's super cool to help
Because
Open up.
just to give you an idea, what I've just been trying to do right now as a simple thing for learning was, we have on-premise AD. Not much in here for on-premise AD. Got to use the PowerShell. Most of the PowerShell examples are encompassed in much larger workflows. And just trying to create a simple thing where I say, I want to select a computer and run this PowerShell script against that computer. We've got End Central. And for the life of me, I can't figure it out. And it's like, to me, it's just such a simple thing, but I can't decompile it from what's there to figure it out. And I can't find any tutorial on it.
Okay.
Tim or somebody else, do we want to take a 5-minute redirection before the next demo to do that real quick?
We can. We can talk about how we run PowerShell in our workflows, and then how to look at the way a sub workflow runs, because our PowerShell stuff is based on being agnostic as to what RMM you run. So it goes a lot of levels deep because we have sub workflows that account for every RMM. So let me, I'll fire up a screen share real quick and I'll show that. Let me jump into the right org first.
And this call
Thank
will
you.
be
I didn't
recorded.
expect you to show me stuff right now. I just wanted to make comments, but thank you very
Well,
much.
I mean, if you want to learn it, other people probably want to learn it. And this call will be recorded so that if you don't get it on the first pass, you can watch it again.
So this is our demo environment, so it's going to be kind of noisy. But if we look for one of our workflows, like for user onboarding, client new employee. I'm picking this one because I know it's something that we use for running PowerShell. Now it's a very large workflow. You can probably find something simpler, but if I look and I find this action called create user in AD, I know that this is an on-prem workflow. But if I look into it, we see it does a couple things, and each of them are running PowerShell on endpoint. So I've gotten, this is another kind of a meta workflow because it's going to do some more work. So we're using another sub workflow to get closer to what we actually want to do. But if you look at this, I see that this workflow has some inputs provided to it. And this is meant to run on a domain controller or a device by its explicit RMM device ID. And what we're going to pass to it is the script ID or template ID of a PowerShell script. I can click this button and see that I've got a PowerShell script here that is going to run. And this script is stored within Rewst. So a few other parameters here that we're not using because we're going to let it basically just figure it out on its own, because again, this workflow is meant to find a domain controller before running on something. It's also going to pass in the site ID, which is going to be the customer site ID of where we want to run this in the RMM. So if I open up this one, again, we're going another level deep. What we see here is it's kind of a mess because there's a lot of RMMs that we support here at Rewst. So what this workflow is doing is it's determining what RMM we have available. And again, RMMs are the only way that we have to run executables or run PowerShell on an endpoint. We don't have our own agent other than Agent Smith, which is an open source agent that we're writing, but we handle that the same way as we do everything else in here.
I'm going to interrupt. The reason why you also want to support any RMM too is it allows you to switch RMMs in the future and still have your PowerShell running in Rewst without making any changes in Rewst.
Yeah, highly recommend that. This way, if you do change RMMs at any point in the future, you don't have to go rebuild all of your automations. So this huge no-op with lots of transitions coming off of it is really just a giant switch statement if you're used to programming. So here, like if you're using Datto RMM, it's going to take this branch. If you're using ImiBot, which technically is not an RMM, but some of these other things are not technically RMMs, but we call them such in Roost because they give us the ability to run code on an endpoint. If you're using Agent Smith, it's going to take this one. And if you look at these, they're all different workflows that are made for the RMMs themselves. And so since each workflow, each RMM behaves a little bit differently, these are going to be set up a little bit differently. So I didn't catch what RMM you're using, but actually you said enable, didn't you?
Yep, in Central.
In Central. So let's see if we can find that. Here it is. And so we can look at this workflow, and this is the first time I'm seeing it look myself. So I'm going to kind of learn along with you on what it's doing. But basically, we're validating the input coming into it. Workflows have input variables. And again, these are going to correspond with whatever we called the master sub workflow with. So that script ID or device name or the template of the script, the PowerShell script that we're going to run. It's going to determine if we're going by a host name or a device ID. It's going to continue on. Basically, we're just validating this input. It's going to get information about the customer. So if we passed in a device ID, we're going to take this branch. If we're trying to still resolve it based on the name, it's going to take this branch. Then it's going to basically list your customers to find the right one. And continue on. But then, we're going to basically it's going to resolve all these different options as they come through. But the real kind of magic as to how we run PowerShell is we do it kind of out of band. We tell the RMM that we want to schedule a task to run some PowerShell. So it's going to look like this depending on the RMM you're using. So in Central, we have a specific script that we're going to call. We probably worked with you to get that script installed to run it. We're going to give it a name. This looks like we're generating a nice, unique name to give it, this execution. It's a script. We're going to run this on the system. We've resolved the device ID. We're going to give it that. We've resolved the customer ID. We're going to give it that. And then we're going to have this is where we're going to actually pass in the content of the script. Now, the script we're actually giving it is a URL to run to download the code. The reason why is like PowerShell, sometimes when we pass it as parameters to the APIs, it can trip things up. And what we do is we create an ephemeral URL here. We call it a webhook, where the content of that message is going to be hosted by us. And the shell script that runs, the PowerShell script that runs, is actually going to go out and reach out and pull that content down with a GET request. The other thing that we're doing is we're going to wait for the agent to post the results of that PowerShell back up to us. So we're going to create another URL, and we're going to wait for a post to come from that agent with the objects that the PowerShell script generates. And we're going to use that to continue on with the execution. So if we look at these templates, do I still have it open? Let me go over here. Yeah.
So Tim's digging around. The reason why we want the script to post back is so that you can get whatever the output of the script was into some JSON that you can use elsewhere in your automation. Yes. If you just want to run scripts from your RMM, you should just use your RMM. If you want to run scripts and then use the output of what the script outputted to like make tickets, update tickets, do something with Azure AD, do something in some third-party product, that's when you would use Roost to run scripts through your RMM.
Yeah, so if we look at this PowerShell script, a lot of what it's doing is just creating a large object with the results of the activity we're doing. So in this case, we're creating a user When we create it, we want to know if it was successful or not. We might want to get the SID of the user. We might want to get a couple of the properties, and we'll put these into that object, and we'll post that back to us to use later on in the workflow. So when you use these sub workflows that are existing, all you need to do is pass a PowerShell script that you store in Roost, or actually the ID of this script. And the PowerShell that runs will result in a post being made back that you can use the results of that PowerShell to make further decisions in your workflow. So, for example, if you want to list all the users that are disabled, you could create a PowerShell script that does that, puts that into a list object, and then we can run actions on each of those user accounts later in the workflow.
And then as I opened the call, asking questions works really well. And one of the best ways to utilize the ROC is to try it, fail, and then just share your workflow in your private channel and say, hey, why won't my script run? And then my team will come in and tell you, well, do X, Y, and Z, or I helped you do X, Y, and Z, and then you can learn from them when you ask them.
Yep. So again, if we look at this, just to kind of summarize it, we're going to get the result of this script. And then that result is going to have attributes in it. So we get the results, whether or not it worked. We're able to just basically parse out those things and decide what next step we're going to take in our workflow. So if it didn't create, then we might update the ticket. Say this thing didn't work. What did you do? Did you give us a bad username, or did this user already exist? Things like that. Does that help?
It's a good start. I would say like certain things would be useful. So I went through the training, some of the training, and I said, great. They did the sample of the add to a user group with Microsoft 365, and I love how that went, because it started small, and it showed how to add more to it, and so forth. Well, I promise, I go, that's great, but we don't have our AD syncs not syncing all our groups and everything like that. So we got to do this with on-premise. So I'm going and thinking, okay, well, how can I create a simple workflow just like that one to add to a group, but using on-premise?
Yeah,
it's obviously not as straightforward.
Yeah, so running on-prem is going to be a challenge. There's a lot of steps involved. Like I showed, we went like 4 or 5 levels deep with workflows to make it work. I would recommend we have, like, if you open up that user onboard workflow, there are some sub workflows in there specifically for adding users to on-prem groups. I would just steal those. Like, you can copy directly from that script, copy those actions, and they're going to have input variables. Like I'm looking at one, there's a username, the input variables are username and group name, and then it'll handle that for you. So you can just use that as basically a meta automation, use it as a sub workflow in your existing workflows, and it should just work for you.
Okay, because that's one of the things I was looking at, some of these sub workflows, and I see references to certain variables. I'm thinking, okay, well, these are somewhere else in the workflow. Like, am I going to be able to use this just on its own or not? And you should be able to. So if you look at the execution history of a workflow, you should see exactly what went into that sub workflow. And the kind of the beauty and the downside of using sub workflows is that only the information you pass it is available to that sub workflow. It's like calling a module in programming. Like, it doesn't have access. There's no global variables that it's going to access other than the organization stuff that it pulls directly. So that if there are 4 input variables and you give it 4 valid pieces of data, it should do what it's supposed to do. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Keep ask up in Discord and in the channels, and people will help you.
I know I will be. It's as I get to know this, but once I get it, it's like I have grandiose plans for this, but it's like, I realize I got to take baby steps on it. I've got a whole list of stuff that I want to try to do with this, but it's like gotta get the basics out of it first.
Just
So,
posted a link in chat for you to the Foundation series, which if you
Yeah, I
haven't
did
checked
it.
out, you should. Okay.
I just like when you mentioned it earlier, I went in and signed up for Monday, and it's great. It's perfect because my onboarding is right after it. So
Perfect.
and Rod, there are 1,000 MSPs in Discord that want to see you succeed. Ask your questions in the coop and other channels, as well as your private channel. We only got like 2 minutes left now. Ash, did we cut someone off?
Since I'm
That's
here,
okay.
Yeah,
one question I
that's it.
wanted to ask, I had held it, but since I'm talking, so I won't ask again later. Does anybody know? I've been told it's requested and planned is multi-tenancy for Azure, because we have a challenge with that right now, because our M365 stuff is all in one tenancy and all our Azure stuff is in another tenancy. So in order to get access to this stuff right now, I had to create a fake child company to integrate it. And I'm told that it is a feature that's
right now. But yeah.
like, I'm told it's a feature that's supposed to be coming, but I'm just kind of curious if anyone knows any sort of idea on that.
I don't have a timeline on that. I don't think it was scheduled or planned for the first quarter, but
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's fine here. I just need to know if there's plans and this is going to be in a month or two. Oh, you know what? I may just hold back on trying to do things this way. But if it's going to be a while, then I'll use the workarounds. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. I think the questions are useful. And so I'll follow up with you on Discord, Daniel, with the USA, and Jim Barry, I think I saw you message me too. We're out of time now.
We're out of time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll be back again next Friday at the same time. Have a good week, everyone.
Have a good
See
week.
you.
Okay,
Thank
guys.
you.
Meow.
See
Thank you.
next week. Bye.